Go over to another 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time game. This one on CBS. That is number 4 Penn State going across the country to USC. No longer ranked USC because they just lost to Minnesota, but still good enough team that we have to preview this game, Dawn. And really, like I just mentioned, the storyline to know, will a cross-country road trip hurt Penn State like it has for others this year? Because conference realignment has made all these conferences no longer be regionalized. Now they're entire nationwide, honestly. And now some schools, like Penn State is in this game, is going to travel 3 time zones to play a conference game, which is something that we've never thought we would say before. And we've seen this affect top teams as recent as this weekend. Number 10 Michigan lost to unranked Washington after traveling more than 2,300 miles to Seattle. I understand Michigan was underdog in that game, but I think the travel had to do with it a little bit in that spread. And then one of the teams in this game, actually, Dawn, number 11 USC, traveled more than 1,900 miles to Minnesota. They lost that game as well. Number 8 Miami traveled more than 3,000 miles to Cal, and they needed a 25-point comeback to escape an upset from the Golden Bears. So Penn State is traveling 3 time zones, like I said, nearly 2,600 miles to Los Angeles to take on USC in what's probably Penn State's hardest game of the year outside of the Ohio State game on November 2nd. So my storylines is a little bit different than what we usually have for these storylines, but will this cross-country road trip hurt Penn State in the long run?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a trend we've seen already. There have been very few cross-country wins, and I think it's a thing sometimes we're going to have to be more careful of going forward, picking these games as you go. They talk about it in the NFL for a while. It's very hard to travel 3 time zones, 2 time zones, whatever. This is a thing, and I think it's going to start to be an argument about, with maybe especially the Big Ten and the ACC, about do we start maybe going back to divisions at least? And even then, those West Coast teams are so far out there, even if you went back to divisions, I don't even know how that would work. So, no, it's a factor for sure. It's going to be a big factor, and it's something we're going to have to see, honestly, every week and every year now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Dawn, you had the pleasure of once again breaking down the Andy Kotelnicki offense in this one. So what should we be looking out for when Penn State has the football in this game?
I'm gonna focus more on Drew Aller here and just how good he's been, how poised he's been. Obviously, his command of the offense is better. He's throwing the ball more accurately, calmer in the pocket, more rhythm. I even see him taking off to run a little bit more often, using his athleticism. He just looks so much more comfortable, right? And I think what Andy Kotelnicki has done is just relax him a bit. Like, didn't last year there was so many points where it looked tense?
Yeah.
And Andy just goes in there and he's like, listen, make the reads, run the offense. If you have to get to your second read, cool. If you have to take off running, cool. But look, Drew Aller, when he's in rhythm this year, has a 91.6 passing grade. It's the 12th best in the country. And when he's in rhythm, top 5 completion percentage at almost 75%. If you don't disrupt him somehow, and USC's pass rush has not been great this year. They have, D'Anton Lynn should be credited a lot for fixing this defense and where it was at last year. Absolutely. I think their back 7 is way better. They're tackling way better. Secondary linebackers, they have a lot of better players. The one thing they don't quite have yet is a pass rush. And if you don't have a pass rush, Aller's going to kill you in rhythm. And right now, even if you do, Drew Aller is the 2nd highest graded quarterback in the country under pressure. And I know pressure is volatile, but you're just seeing him. There's no panic here, right? 2nd in overall grade, 3rd in passing grade, 2nd in yards per attempt. No turnover-worthy plays under pressure, and he's only got 2 in total on the season. We know Drew Aller is safe with the football, but he's going to be especially safe with it if you don't find any way to disrupt him, right? And USC, the one thing they really haven't been doing is disrupting quarterbacks. I mean, they only have 6 sacks this year. They're 92nd in pass rush grade. And I think this Penn State offense, we can definitively say it's better than last year.
Yeah, oh yeah.
That's without question. And they're going to have Nick Singleton back.
William Clifford was the highest graded receiver last week, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, no, the receivers are playing. We've talked Harrison Wallace, Liam Clifford, Tyler Warren at tight ends having a spectacular year. They lean on the run game, and they don't ask Aller to do a ton right now. He doesn't have 30 pass attempts in any game so far. So they're just asking him, Andy's asking him to just make the throws he's supposed to make. And I'll tell you what, these balls down the seam that they're throwing in this offense, it is a trademark right now. Yeah. When Aller gets to gun it down the seam in Kotelnicki's offense, he's got and I'll tell you what, every time I watch him, I forget. I'm like, Drew Aller's got a rifle, like a top 5 or 6 arm strength arm in the country. He's got so much velocity. He makes those throws look so easy, even at times off platform. But I just think if they don't find a way to disrupt him, they have no chance. And even if they do find a way to disrupt him, he's been calm and cool in the pocket and even taking off running, picking up first downs. It's really, to me, when I watch this Penn State offense right now, especially he got hot in the middle of the game last week, too, against UCLA. He just looks so much more poised. I think he's ready. I think he's starting to get ready for big moments this season, and this is the first big moment on this cross-country trip against another quarterback in Miller Moss, who we know has big moments in him. So this is going to be fun, but I think USC, if they don't find a pass rush, I think Aller's going to have a good day.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a quarterback battle. That's why we put them in the background of this video, because we knew that these are two guys that are going to be really fun to watch in this game. But really, my matchup to watch, Dawn, when the USC has the ball, USC's offensive line against Penn State's defensive line. So when Caleb Williams is the quarterback for USC, the offensive line was much maligned. But I think they got way too much blame for some of the issues, because Caleb Williams, for all the amazing things Caleb Williams does, he's a very hard quarterback to block for because of how long he holds onto the football, how much he dances around back there. So really, when you look at the pass blocking rates for USC in those years under Caleb Williams, they were actually really good. Right? And it wasn't all their fault. It was a lot of the pressures, a lot of the sacks were on Caleb Williams. This year, they've been terrible. This offensive line has been really bad, and it's been as bad as people thought they were a couple years ago as well. Among Power 4 offensive lines, USC has the third worst overall grade at a 56.4 grade. USC has the second worst pass blocking grade, fifth worst run blocking grade in the Power 4 this year. The interior is below average. It's not that good. But what really is the big issue, the offensive tackles have really struggled for USC this year. Mason Murphy and Elijah Page are the two starters there. As a group, USC's tackles are the lowest graded in the Power 4 with the worst pass blocking grade as well. And so far this year, USC has allowed a sack or a hit on 7.2% of their pass blocking snaps. That's the most among any Power 4 offensive line right now. Dawn, that's a huge issue. Because you're going up against Penn State, whose front seven, when you talk about how Drew Aller and this Penn State offense is a lot better, but the front seven, as always, is the best part of the Nittany Lions so far. Penn State this year is one of 5 teams in the country with top 10 grades, both in run defense and in pass rush. They're 7th in run defense grade, 5th in pass rushing grade. And even worse in this matchup for USC. I mentioned before how the tackles are by far the weakness of that offensive line. Penn State has 2 future NFL draft picks at edge defender in Abdul Carter and Denai Dennis Sutton. Carter, projected top 15 pick in the 2025 NFL draft, and he transitioned from off-ball linebacker to edge defender. It took some time. Over the last 2 games, though, he has a 23.2% pressure rate. This guy is getting after the quarterback. He was utterly dominant in that win over Illinois. He was very good in the win over UCLA last week as well. So he is really coming alive right now, and you're seeing why he's a projected top 15 pick in the draft. I think Miller Moss is going to have to get the ball out of his hands at lightning speed to even have a chance of being effective. And we saw in that Michigan game, Michigan's D-line dominated USC in that game, and ultimately is a big reason why they won it. I think Penn State's D-line has a very good chance to be pretty much as effective as Michigan was.
Yeah, it's the biggest mismatch on the field for sure. And don't forget your guy Zane Durant on the inside, Monster. Too. Great player. I mean, they've got, as always, they always have great pass rushers, Penn State does. But this is a huge problem for USC. They do have experience dealing with this, but I think even we saw in the Minnesota game last week at the end of the game, a guy like Ja Joyner was tearing them up too off the edge. It's a real problem right now, this pass protection. And look, Miller Moss is tough. He does get the ball out relatively quick and accurately, but eventually you have to protect him for more than 2 seconds. It just can't. You can't ask him to be that quick, to be at a Tom Brady level of processing speed all of the time, right? And I think it's part of the reason that, look, USC's turned the ball over 8 times in the last 3 weeks. That you just can't win like that, especially when you're playing against a Penn State team that doesn't turn the ball over, right? Drew Aller, again, only 2 turnover-worthy plays all year. They run the ball a lot. They're very safe with the football. It's a problem. And if, look, any team that can't block has an issue. If USC can't block this front, at least somewhat, they're going to have a big problem.
Definitely. So, Dawn, another thing we haven't talked about, but there are 2 coaches in this game that, in big games have gone maligned for not winning those big games, in Lincoln Riley and James Franklin. So which of those 2 coaches are going to end up winning this game and getting a big win for their programs?
I think a couple of things stand out here for me. That advantage that Penn State has with their pass rush is it's a big one. Yeah. It's a big problem for USC. It's the single biggest advantage in this game. I think Abdul Carter's in for another monster day. I think you could tell last week Nick Singleton was out for Penn State against UCLA. You could tell the difference with him out. And Katron Allen's a very good player, obviously, but Singleton adds a level of explosiveness to their run game that just it's exclusive to him right now. Okay, and I think those two things together, Singleton coming back and their dominance in the pass rush, and again, Drew Aller's ability to stay poised either under pressure or if you leave him clean and he's just back there in the pocket and he can just rip the ball down the seams especially. I think there's a lot more problems for USC in this game. I think the biggest problem for Penn State is the travel. And look, I think that sometimes the only thing for me is Penn State starts a little slow. And I think if you're them, you'd like to get off to a better start on the road, quiet whatever crowd is going to be in there. But I think Penn State's the better team. 27-17, I have Penn State. I think their defensive line dominates this game.
Yeah, I got Penn State as well, 28-21. I will say, to Miller Moss's credit, even though his offensive line was not doing him any favors in that Michigan game, he still almost won that game for them, right? So I think it's still possible that he could win this game for USC, even if the Penn State defensive line is getting home on every single play. But I do think Penn State's defensive line is the best unit on the field in this one, and I do think that Penn State's going to win this game 28-21, and USC suffers their third loss in 4 games, which effectively they're out. They're not making college. No team, I think, this year is making the college football playoff with 3 losses unless somehow a team makes a conference championship game and clinches a spot through that. But you're not getting an at-large bid with 3 losses, and you're most likely not getting into a conference title game with 3 losses either. And I think USC, with their third loss, they're out of the playoff picture if they lose this game.